is the plan for the future of your children. But there was an initiative that really laid out the plan for this under President Obama, and it was called the Neighborhood Revitalization Initiative. And you can Google that, and what will come up is this initiative that said that he was going to identify 5 areas of change, and he called it place-based community. So the whole idea is going into your community and creating the change that would be necessary. And there were 5 areas. One area was HUD, which would be in housing. And he actually referred to that as choice neighborhoods. And the second one was promise neighborhoods. And this was an initiative that was started in Harlem Children's Zone originally. It was totally funded by Obamacare. But this was a system that was set up in the school to have what they called comprehensive continuum of education, family, and community supports, where the school would be the hub of the community. And this is where they explain completely that your school was going to be or going to create these womb-to-tomb services from actually prenatal all the way through retirement. And this is what the promise neighborhoods were going to be. The third one was Burn Criminal Justice Innovations from the Department of Justice. This was totally zeroing in on the civil rights. Okay, so if anything was going on and it wasn't going to be equitable, then there would be civil rights lawsuits that would be thrown into the mix to create the change that was needed to create equity across the board. Okay, so keeping that in mind, the fourth thing was community health centers. And with community health centers, that meant preventive, primary care, medically, quote-unquote, underserved, urban, rural, everything, health centers for everyone. And that, again, was womb to workplace. And then the last one, and the really very, very important, was the Behavioral Health Community Initiative. And this was through an organization within HHS that was called, I believe they call it SAMHSA, which is Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So when I looked at this initiative, it really explains why different things have happened. Some of you may have heard about this race database that President Obama has initiated, where he is going into every neighborhood and identifying neighborhoods across the country with his database and with his data collection, and identifying any neighborhood that has over 50% white people living in it. Okay, and this is what it says outright. So what he plans to do is to create equity. They will use the Department of Justice, and they will create these lawsuits that would either force you to annex areas around so that your neighborhood is actually annexed toward one of the major cities, which would be part of the regionalization that is being pushed with the sustainability in the UN. Okay. But basically, what that also meant, if we're going to bring 50% more minorities, illegals, into your neighborhoods, that creates the change in your tax base. It also creates the change in your school. That now creates your school as a school-wide program under Title I. When that happens, that means when your school is identified as a school-wide Title I program, that means every child in your school is at risk under the education regulations. So this was why when you're looking at the total program, then you begin to understand why these things are happening and why the change is taking place. So then you have the community health centers, and you also have the behavioral health. So doing the research in each of those areas, then it gives you understanding why in Senate Bill 1177 you have all of this information that is jam-packed into this bill that is nothing but mental health. So when I say that, for instance, and I do have a paper out that's called Just Page Numbers. I've done this in the past, and I think perhaps Alice has that, and perhaps Lynn has that also. But what it does is shows you how invasive the mental health agenda is. But the key, like on page 43, it mandates that we produce an individual, interpretive, descriptive, diagnostic report on individual children. Okay, so we're not talking about reading a math now. Now we're talking about an interpretive diagnostic report that will be disaggregated, and that's on page 44, by race, ethnicity, economically disadvantaged, disabilities, English proficient, gender, migrant. So this connects with your HUD collection of information of how many families are race-related, or if your neighborhood is 50%, more than 50% white, which would create the influx of this relocation of people into your neighborhood through HUD. And our understanding is that if your local boards, your community development boards, do not initiate this 50% where they're going to have to create more housing or annex more property beyond your own little neighborhood, then the DOJ under civil rights will be filing suit, so that you are going to be forced to do that. Now, another thing that's absolutely throughout the bill are these, I've been referring to them as the psychobabble. The psychobabble, where it's forcing psychological techniques on your children, behavior modification, is